we've actually been able to shape the overall tonality of the vocal considerably, lots of dramatic changes, without it sounding overly processed. Now, let's get overly processed. Let's take this device right here, which is very colored, and see how it sounds in comparison.
You know he saw the world his way from a whole new view, and time was not so well defined, and the poem so literal. Every distance has its touch, every touch reminds.
Now, what's dramatically different about that is how the vocal responds to it in terms of its musicality. Now, this is meant to have kind of a vintage recording console type of sound to it. I don't know what console he had in mind, but kind of a vintage, older style console, maybe from the 70s or that era. It sounds much more colored, and in other words, less neutral, but it's very musical. So let's just stick with that for a second and go over to the guitar. Now, the relationship between the guitar and the vocal changes dramatically depending on what EQ we just picked. So we would need to actually shape the guitar in a way that matches what we just did with the vocal.
You know he saw the world his way from a whole new view, and time was not so well defined, and the poem so literal.
Okay, now we can hear right off the bat that a really beautiful reverb on the vocal would immediately be a great production tool, but we're not going to do that right now for the sake of keeping it sparse and bare and really dealing with the tones. Now, we will have to put some compression on the guitar just because it's very dynamic, as the vocal was. And in terms of reproducing this for you in a way that you can actually get something out of it, it's pretty much a necessity. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, we have decided to continue, of course, with the vintage sound, going for that, as some of you may have presupposed. On the guitars, we're actually using an EQ we saw earlier. So we're kind of focusing a lot on that 4-pack of PSP, which we weren't planning to do, and we're certainly not doing for any other reason than we like the way they sound. What I'm going to focus on here and try to explain to you is how we can shape that guitar to not just support the vocal, but also make it sound better, and vice versa. So, first of all, I'm going to turn off the compression and EQ on the guitars that we set up, so we can listen to that for a second, and then we're going to shape the sound of the guitars to really help the production and overall sound of the vocal. Now, keep in mind, we heard the guitars from scratch here. We know that they're a little shaky in terms of the overall recording of that. And this is very much designed to be that way on purpose, that we're going for something that you very much experience, probably will experience in your home studio, and what we can do about it to make it sound great. So let's have a listen.
You know he saw the world his way from a whole new view, and time was not so well defined, and the poem so literal. Every distance has its touch, every touch reminds of you, like the distance of the stars, every angle. You know he saw the world his way from a whole new view, and time was not so well defined, and the poem so literal. Every distance has its touch, every touch the distance of the stars. You know he saw the world his way from a whole new view, and time was not so well defined, and the poem so literal. Every distance has its touch, every touch reminds of you, like the distance of the stars. Every angle something denser.
Okay, now let's get into a little bit of concept here. We're using some vintage style, colored EQs over the most, precise, accurate EQs. First of all, no EQ is really that precise. All of them have their own sound and color, all of them. And there's a number of phase linear companies out there now saying, theirs is the best, or other people are saying that. And some of the ones that are the most accurate sounding sound rather dull or uninteresting or unmusical even. So it's important that whatever you use enhances the music, that sounds good with the music. And that's going to reproduce. That's one of the key things here. And that's why I stick with, phase linear and near phase linear for the most part EQs. Now, these are probably some of the more colored EQs that I would use. But as you can see, they're quite musical. So to keep it all in mind, the end result is the aesthetics. It all has to sound good in the end. That's what it's all about.